Hi friends, it's good to see you today. I wanted to start our time together today by doing the calendar from our memory, and maybe we could sing the days of the week song together and talk about the weather, and then we can read a book, okay? All right, so today is Thursday, March 26th, 2020. So when we sing our days of the week song, when we hear Thursday or jueves, let's, shall we snap this time? And remember, if you can't snap, the only way we'll learn is if you practice. So take your middle fingers and your thumbs and push them together to make a snap when you hear Thursday and jueves. Are you ready? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There are 7 days, there are 7 days, there are 7 days in the week. Domingo, lunes, martes, miércoles, jueves, viernes, sábado. 7 días, 7 días, 7 días en la semana. What's the weather? What's the weather? What's the weather out today? Is it sunny? Is it rainy? What's the weather out today? ¿Cuál es el clima? ¿Cuál es el clima? ¿Cuál es el clima de hoy? ¿Está soleado? ¿Está lloviendo? ¿Cuál es el clima de hoy? And if you guys look outside today, it's sunny with some clouds. Do you guys see clouds with the sun today? Yeah, that's just part of it being spring. When it's summer, it's almost always sunny with very little clouds. And in winter, it's almost always cloudy with not a lot of sun. But spring is in between. So we had a lot of days with sun and clouds and even rain. So today, I wanted to read a book that was about an animal that we often see come out in the spring because they begin to have babies. And this book is about a mommy and a daddy duck who have babies and are trying to figure out where to live. The book is titled Make Way For Ducklings by Robert McCloskey. And this book is really fun because we get to see a whole town and a whole scene with every page. And so when you're looking at the book, try to imagine, does this look like a place you know? Have you been to a place that looks like this? And also notice that the illustrations, the drawings, are only one color. So even if you just have a pencil, you can still create art just like Robert McCloskey did in Make Way for Ducklings. Do you see the mama? And let's count how many ducklings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 on the front. Let's see how many they have. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were looking for a place to live. But every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a nice place, Mrs. Mallard said it was no good. There was sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise a family where there might be foxes or turtles. So they flew on and on. Looks like there are homes in the town and a big, maybe pond. And they are called Mr. and Mrs. Mallard because Mr. is usually a man and Mrs. is a woman. So Mr. is the male, the boy duck, and Mrs. is the female, the girl duck. So that's the mom and dad who are going to have some new ducklings soon. When they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. Looks like people are going for walks around the big pond. The next morning, they fished for their breakfast in the mud at the bottom of the pond, but they didn't find much. See how their bottoms stick up? When they're fishing in the pond, their heads go down and all you can see are their feet and their tails. Looks like people are reading in the park and walking with their families. Just as they were getting ready to start on their way, a strange, enormous, that means really big, bird came by. It was pushing a boat full of people, and there was a man sitting on its back. "Good morning," quacked Mr. Mallard, being polite. The big bird was too proud to answer, but the people on the boat threw peanuts into the water, so the mallards followed them all around the pond and got another breakfast that was better than the first. So they're on a boat. Do you think this swan is real or is it pretend? It's pretend. It's part of the boat. It's a decoration where the boat driver sits. So Mr. Mallard was confused why the swan didn't respond, but it's because it's not real. Let's see what happens. "I like this place," said Mrs. Mallard as they climbed out on the bank and waddled along. "Why don't we build a nest and raise our ducklings right in this pond? There are no foxes and no turtles, and the people feed us peanuts. What could be better?" "Good," said Mr. Mallard, delighted that at last Mrs. Mallard had found a place to suit her. "But..." "Look out!" squawked Mrs. Mallard, all of a dither. That means she was all upset. "You'll get run over." And when she got her breath, she added, "This is no place for babies. With all of these horrid things rushing around, we have to look somewhere else." What happened? Was someone riding a bike and maybe didn't see the ducks? Yikes. So they flew over Beacon Hill, around the State House, but there was no place there. Look at these big buildings. They looked in Louisburg Square, but there was no water to swim in. It's a little park, but there's no water close by. Then they flew over the Charles River. "This is better," quacked Mr. Mallard. "That island looks like a nice, quiet place. It's only a little way from the public garden." "Yes," said Mrs. Mallard, remembering the peanuts. "That looks just right to hatch ducklings." So they're talking about that little island in the middle of the river. And this is a big bridge that cars drive over, and it looks like boats sail under the bridge. They chose a cozy spot among the bushes near the water and settled down to build their nest. And only just in time, for now they were beginning to molt. Molt means when their old feathers start to come off because it's starting to warm up and they don't need so much fluff. Their old feathers started to drop out and they would not be able to fly again until new ones grew in. So it looks like they're getting ready. They built a little nest to lay the eggs and they're settling in. But of course, they could still swim. And one day they swam over to the park on the riverbank, and there they met a policeman called Michael. Michael fed them peanuts, and after that, the Mallards called on Michael every day. I bet Michael liked having some friends to come visit him. After Mrs. Mallard had laid 8 eggs in the nest, she couldn't go visit Michael anymore because she had to sit on the eggs and keep them warm. She moved off the nest only to get a drink of water or have her lunch or to count the eggs to make sure they were all still there. Shall we count them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All the eggs are there. Looks like Mr. Mallard, the daddy, is over by the water. One day, the ducklings hatched out. First came Jack, then Cack, then Lack, then Mack, then Knack, then Whack, then Pack, then Quack. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were bursting with pride. That means they were very proud. It was a great responsibility taking care of so many ducklings, and it kept them very busy. Did you notice all of their names rhymed? It's kind of fun. One day, Mr. Mallard decided he would like to take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like. So off he set. "I will meet you in 1 week at the public garden," he quacked over his shoulder. "Take good care of the ducklings." "Don't you worry," said Mrs. Mallard. "I know all about bringing up children." And she did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're saying, "Bye, Dad, see you in a week." She taught them how to swim and dive. See, that one's diving. She taught them how to walk in a line and come when they are called, and to keep a safe distance away from bikes and scooters and other things with wheels. That's a good lesson to learn, isn't it? Look, she has all her ducklings in a row. When at last she felt perfectly satisfied with them, she said one morning, "Come along, children, follow me." Before you can wink an eyelash, Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack fell into line just as they had been taught. Mrs. Mallard led the way to the water, and they swam behind her to the opposite bank. They're very good listeners, aren't they? There they waddled ashore and waddled along until they came to a highway. That's a very busy road. Mrs. Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Honk, honk, went the horns of the speeding cars. Quack, went Mrs. Mallard as she tumbled back again. Quack, 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 went Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack, just as loud as their little quackers could quack. The cars kept speeding by and honking, and Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings kept right on quack, quack, quacking. Oh my. They made so much noise that Michael came running, waving his arms and blowing his whistle. It says, tweet. The ducks are saying quack, quack, quack. The cars are saying honk. He planted himself, that means he stood, in the center of the road and raised one hand to stop the traffic. Then he beckoned them, he called them with the other, the way policemen do, for Mrs. Mallard to start crossing over. Michael was helping, wasn't he? As soon as Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings were safe on the other side, on their way to Mount Vernon Street, Michael rushed back to his police booth. What do you think he's doing there? He called Clancy at headquarters and said, "There's a family of ducks walking down the street." Clancy said, "Family of ducks? What? Send a police car, quick," said Michael. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mallard had reached the corner of a bookshop and turned onto Charles Street with Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack, all marching in line behind her. They're good little ducklings. Everyone stared. An old lady from Beacon Hill said, "Isn't it amazing?" And the man who swept the streets said, "Well, now, isn't that a sight?" And when Mrs. Mallard heard them, she was so proud she tipped her nose in the air and walked along with an extra spring in her waddle. She was very proud of all of her ducklings, wasn't she? Can you see them underneath the car? They're walking. When they came to the corner of Beacon Street, There was a police car with 4 policemen that Clancy had sent from headquarters. The policemen held back the traffic so Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings could march across the street. Do you see them? 1, 2, 3, 4 policemen holding up the traffic so they're safe. Mrs. Mallard's heading across the street to the public garden. They marched right in to the public garden. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and Mama. Inside the gate, they all turned around to say thank you to the policemen. The policemen smiled and waved goodbye. Kind policemen, huh? They really like to help. When they reached the pond and swam across to the island, there was Mr. Mallard waiting for them, just as he had promised. Here they go, swim across. The ducklings liked the new island so much that they decided to live there. All day they followed the swan boats and ate peanuts. And when night falls, they swim to their island and go to sleep. Wasn't that a fun book? And it talks about the life cycle of a duck, doesn't it? So ducks start as an egg. The mama duck lays an egg. That's different than mammals like us. We have our babies alive. But ducks, birds, are like reptiles and like amphibians and fish, and they lay eggs and they have to wait for the eggs to hatch for their babies to come out. I have a really fun song that I know we've practiced before, and I bet you know it at home too. So I hope you can sing along with me. And it's about some ducks. And we're gonna put 5 fingers up. Are you ready? And all of these ducks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are going to go on an adventure. But Mama Duck looks like this. Quack, quack. She's a little nervous about them going too far. So let's see what happens. Ready? 5 little ducks went out one day, over the hills and far away. Mama Duck said, quack, 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 but only 4 little ducks came back. 4 little ducks went out one day, over the hills and far away. Mama Duck said, quack, 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 but only 3 little ducks came back. 3 little ducks went out one day, over the hills and far away. Mama Duck said, quack, 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 but only 2 little ducks came back. 2 little ducks went out one day, over the hills and far away. Mama Duck said, quack, 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 but only 1 little duck came back. 1 little duck went out one day, over the hills and far away. Mama Duck said, quack, 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 but none of her 5 little duckies came back. Sad Mama Duck went out one day, over the hills and far away. Mama Duck said, quack, 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 and all of her 5 little duckies came back. We know that one, don't we? Thanks for singing it with me. You can also do it if you draw a picture of 5 baby ducklings and 1 mama duck, and then you can glue them onto popsicle sticks and do it all on your own and create your own little song with those. Thanks for joining me today and talking about ducklings and seeing what a fun book Make Way for Ducklings is. I'll see you guys next time, okay? Have a good day.